Hello, welcome back. I'm Hua. This is Lesson 2, Week 4. In our previous session, we learned how to write a paragraph using process analysis. Today, we will focus on another method of paragraph development, classification. Please look at this photograph. What does this photo show? It shows fruits and vegetables on display at a farmer's market. How are the fruits and vegetables arranged? They are arranged according to type of produce. Can you imagine how difficult it would be to find what you need if all the produce were randomly piled onto a table or shelf, with cucumbers, tomatoes, onions, peppers, and bananas all mixed together? Whoever arranged the fruits and vegetables in the market used a process called classification, grouping things into categories based on specific characteristics. This chapter will show you how to write effective paragraphs based on classification. As a matter of fact, on a daily basis, we use classification to organize things and ideas. Your dress drawers are probably organized by categories, with socks and sweatshirts in different drawers. Grocery stores, libraries, and even restaurant menus arrange items in groups according to similar characteristics. Today, we have two objectives. The first one, understand the characteristics of paragraphs structured to classify objects or ideas. The second one, be able to compose such paragraphs successfully based on the method of one principle. Okay, let's talk about characteristics of classification. The first characteristic of classification is classification groups things according to one principle. To sort items into groups, a writer needs to decide on what basis to do so. For example, birds could be classified in terms of their size, habitat, or diet. To develop an effective set of categories, a writer needs to choose one principle of classification at a time. All right, can you explain why the following classification is not acceptable? Sports can be classified into jumping, ball games, running, gymnastics, and backstroke. Yes, because this example violates the principle of one principle. For ball games should be considered a general category, while jumping and running are subcategories of track and field events. Gymnastics is also a general category. Here is a proper example of the use of classification. One way that sports can be classified is whether they focus on individual athletic ability. Gymnastics, track and field events, swimming, golf, or are team sports, basketball, baseball, soccer, etc., or mainly focus on one-on-one competition, like boxing, fencing, tennis. The second characteristic is classification follows a principle determined by the writer's purpose and audience. Because several different principles can be used to categorize any group, the writer's purpose and audience should determine the principle of classification. The personnel director of a college might classify professors by age in preparing a financial report for trustees that projects upcoming retirements, whereas a student writing a humor column for the campus newspaper might categorize professors by teaching style. Look at this example. India was an easy way for Europeans to refer to any person living in the mysterious new land across the ocean. But these people never thought of themselves as Indians. Instead, they had hundreds of different names, each identifying a separate tribe and culture. Some Indians were hunters, some were farmers, some fishers, some warriors, some slaves, some priests, and some artists. Many groups of Indians lived in one place all their lives. Others were almost always traveling, searching for food. Each group had its own language, although some used the sign language to communicate with other tribes. Some Indians led a simple life of hunting and gathering. A few groups built great cities and majestic temples. Some were almost always at war with other tribes. But many groups of Indians almost never fought. Each tribe was basically independent. So my first question for this paragraph is, what are the principles applied in this paragraph? Yes, we might say occupations in sentence 4, ways of life in sentence 5, languages in sentence 6. And the second question is, what effects do these classifications achieve? We can see that in this paragraph, when the word India is first mentioned, we have only a general and vague idea of who these particular people are, and may even think that they must be identical to each other in many ways. But then the paragraph begins to classify these people into many recognizable groups by their different characteristics. Thus, we have a much better idea of what the Indians as peoples with different cultures, histories, languages, and ways of life. Therefore, the usefulness of classification is found in how it gives a clear and in-depth view of a subject and, to a certain extent, produces a feeling of order. Now let's read another example paragraph. Different people enjoy doing different things. This is certainly reflected in this beach scene. Some like to sit in the shade, watching the splashing waves in the blue sea and listening to the rhythmic sounds. They think that is the most enjoyable thing to do on the beach. Others prefer basking in the sun, not content to live without an expressive suntan. But primarily, the beach is for children. They rush around up and down the sandy beach, in and out of the water. In a quiet corner, a few children sit with buckets and spades, building sand castles. Yet other smaller children step tentatively into the water to try out paddling, making sure that Dad is not too far away. So in this paragraph, the system of classification is clear. The people on the beach are divided into two major groups, adults and children. Then the adults are further divided into two types. Those who like to sit in the shade, watching and listening to the sea, and those who love to stay in the sun to get themselves tanned. The children are also divided into the older ones and the younger ones, interested in doing different things. Okay, let's move on to sample 3. There are 3 kinds of book owners. The first has all the standard sets and bestsellers, unread, untouched. This deluded individual owns wood pulp and ink, not books. The second has a great many books, a few of them read through, most of them dipped into, but all of them as clean and shiny as the day they were bought. This person would probably like to make books his own, but is restrained by a false respect for their physical appearance. The third has a few books, or many, every one of them dog-eared and dilapidated, shaken and loosened by continual use. Marked and scribbled in, from front to back. This man owns books. Now, analyze the classification in this paragraph. According to the author, book owners can be divided into 3 kinds: those who do not read their books, those who carelessly read short sections of their books, and those who read closely and carefully every one of their books. In his opinion, only the 3rd kind can be said to own books. After analyzing the above 3 examples, I believe you have a better overview of how to write a paragraph using the method of classification. Now, can you list the signal words and phrases used for classification? Yes, you might say the signal words include many kinds of, basic kinds, minor, primary, secondary, classify, classifications, divide, divisions, similar, similarities, dissimilar, dissimilarities, differences, opposing, opposite, aspects, types, classes, parts, categories, regions, characteristics. Or you might use phrases or structures like fall into categories, can be divided into types, classes, or parts. Now let us work on an exercise. Please add items to the following lists. The first one, cities can be classified according to the following criteria: size or living space for its residents. Can you come up with more criteria to classify cities? Yes, we might say administration ranks, population, geographic location, economic development. All of these criteria can also be used to classify cities. The second question, museums can be classified according to the following criteria, like history, popularity. Any other criteria? Yes, we might say location, theme, characteristic, or size. Okay, let's summarize. Classification is a process of sorting people, things, or ideas into groups or categories to help make them more understandable. A successful classification should follow one principle, because several different principles can be used to categorize any group. The writer's purpose and audience should determine the principle of classification. Therefore, you are supposed to choose a principle that will both interest your readers and fulfill your purpose. Enough for now. See you in the next session.